Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. And today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day here in the United States. And so what I wanted to talk about is the content of character. And I know that's making a loose connection between the holiday celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. and, this, what I'm about to talk about. But if you know anything about his speeches or what he talked about, he was always about don't look at somebody and judge them on the outward appearance, judge them with the content of the character. Like, what is it that they do? What is it that they say? And I kind of touched upon characters saying and doing things that define who they are last week. I was talking about dialogue. I was talking about the need for it. And it is a lot about what a character does and not what a character says. And usually what a character says can mislead the audience because their actions show something completely different. And I wanted to come back to that. I wanted to talk about the fact that most characters are about they act in ways that reflect the content of their character, and that in a way is very different from real life because of the fact that it's very hard to tell the content of somebody's character in real life. You can see what people do, obviously, or the way they react to things, but usually we're seeing that in a very small amount of time. Maybe that person just was having a bad day and they just didn't react in the way that they had wanted to. There are any number of reasons why, taking a small slice of somebody's life and defining them in that moment is very unfair. But when it comes to fiction, when it comes to narratives, that is all that we're doing with the characters, is that we're building moments that define who they are. And when we see a character go against what we know the content of their character to be, it can be really, really jarring. And, the recent example that I've seen, and there could be, debate about, the source material or, allow a character to grow from who they were, is in the recent Boba Fett show, the Book of Boba Fett. And as somebody who grew up on Star Wars, who watched all the movies, and I didn't get much into the shows, but just in terms of the basic story, the overarching Skywalker saga. Boba Fett was this very mysterious character that, he had some lines of dialogue, but for the most part, you had to determine who he was by just what he was doing. And, from what you could see, he was part of he was one of the bad guys. He was one of the guys that, took Han Solo and put him in carbonite and delivered him to Jabba the Hutt. And so he was part of he was a bad guy, essentially, even though he was a bounty hunter. And this new show shed some light on that character, especially after the events of Return of the Jedi, where he is pretty much he flies into a Sarlacc pit, which is this pit that digests you for 1,000 years or something like that. And so at the time that Return of the Jedi came out, it was kind of understood that that character was done for. Like, he was just in the pit and he was gone. He was dead. He's not coming back. So in this new series, with spoilers, I guess you could say, like, he gets out, and you get to see like what his path is after climbing out of the pit. And there was a lot about that character that seemed very different, that seemed not to reflect what I knew about that character up to this point. And I had heard that there were, there's the comic book and there's novels and all this kind of other material that I had not read, and I have no idea about. And so I can only really approach it as somebody who only really just watches the shows and the movies, which I think is a lot of people. Like, unless you are a diehard Star Wars fan, you're not really digging into the comic books. You're not trying to find novels to figure out the plot holes and to get more of the story. You're just not doing that. You are relying upon what's being released to kind of bridge the story. And just watching the show up to this point, it doesn't feel like the same character. It doesn't seem like the same character. And there were plenty of moments where I just, knowing who the character is, I was like, why is he not reacting in the way that he should? Like, why is he not doing what I think he should? This doesn't seem like the same character. And I'm very fascinated by that because, for one, allowing a character to grow is, I think it's pretty essential. Like, you want your characters to grow. You don't want them to be the same boring, archetype or whatever it is, that they've been. You want them to kind of have some growth, to realize some things about themselves. But this was a complete 180 from what I'd known, and there was not much in the show that actually bridged that gap of like, okay, well, he was this way, he was this bounty hunter, and now he is this guy who, like, he still wants power, but he's very much like he's doesn't react with violence anymore, or he doesn't seem to be reacting with violence. He seems to be the one who's like trying to talk it out. And I was like, wow, it's really weird. And to be fair, the show's not done yet. They got 3 or 4 more episodes. So maybe over the course of the next couple of weeks, there will be more information. The transition from being this bounty hunter to being, this very subdued character who wants to talk, will make sense. But I don't know. We'll just have to see. But a part of that comes to the fact that, that is just one example of a character who has told us who they are through, like the first time they're on screen, you're like, I know who that character is. I see the content of their character through what is being established. And when, the writers or the filmmakers kind of force that character to be something that they're not, it can be very jarring, and it can be something that is just, it doesn't quite fit. And I find that fascinating because, like, when writing a character, like, you have all of these traits that you can attribute to a character to make them who they are. And it's not necessary to have all the traits worked out for the service of a plot, for the service of a story. Sometimes a character just needs to serve a purpose of being, the protagonist or being the antagonist to the protagonist. Like, there's certain archetypes that they have to fulfill in the story in order for that story to be fulfilling. And a lot of times I think as creative people, as we're writing things, as we're making things, we feel like we need to make sure that everything is fleshed out. And I don't want to say that it's not important for the people who are creating whatever it is, whatever character, to understand their character and to have like a backstory fleshed out, because I believe it is important, because of the fact that if you have that worked out, then when you encounter like falsehoods in the writing, in the character itself, in the way the character's reacting, then you're able to address it, like as you're working it out. If a writer like hands you a script, if you're an actor and you're like, my character would never do that. My character would never say that. Like that is not like that is not them. I don't know who like greenlit this. This is not who the character is. And that's happened so many times where it seems like the writer kind of has an idea about where they want the character to go, and the actor, even if they say this is not what my character would do, or kind of, to be a professional, they're like, well, I am the actor, I have to make this work, I have to find a way that this is logical to me so that I can perform it to the most authentic that I can. But that's really, it really kind of sucks, because sometimes it doesn't work out, because the choices that the characters are forced to make are not reflective of who that character is at their core. And I wanted to really talk about that because of the fact that it seems in the last like 4 or 5 years, a lot of just everyday life is being inserted into our stories. And I don't want to say that we can't talk about these things and then we can't work out the troubles of the modern day through our art and through the characters we create and the stories we want to tell. Like there's a place for all of that. My main problem is when you take something that exists, and you being like the studios or whoever is the one writing, or whoever's in charge of a character that was created like decades ago, and they say, well, it's time for that character to grow, that it's time for that character to be somebody else. And I'm not saying that, once again, I'm not saying that character should not be allowed to grow and to become something else, but they don't have the patience to allow the character to discover that. It seems like they're like, well, we need this character to be like this now, so we're going to have like a montage, where it's like, okay, they were a killer and now montage, and now, hey, they're, they're the nice guy who loves to do gardening now. And that's his character. And it's like, well, no, like you can't do that. You have to allow the audience to kind of like have levels of acceptance that this character that they really love and that's really popular is going to change. And there are any number of limitations. I get it. There's so many roadblocks to actually, getting to that point where you can make that gradual transition, where if you need a character to change, that it can sometimes be very slow and it works. Or, it's like, it's hard to kind of gauge like how long creators should take to bring their character from what they used to be into being something completely new, or just something different, a character that's different. And it's just, it seems to be happening all over the place. I get how we're, it's important to kind of talk about certain issues, but not every character should talk about those issues, if that makes any sense. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before with like, just because there's you want a character to change doesn't mean that they need to change or should change, and that change should not be across the board with every single show and movie. If you're taking all these like legacy characters, all these characters who have been around for decades, and saying, well, we're just going to change them because that's the current thing now. We need to just insert whatever's popular now in order to like maybe they're thinking changing it so that the audience will want to see it, and it's like it actually kind of backfires because nobody goes to see these characters because they want to see them necessarily change into something that they're not. And it's just sad because like it in a way it ruins a lot of great characters, because you could have kept the characters as they were and they would have still been popular. And in fact, a lot of people, the new people who had not known who the character was, would have still liked them, would have still accepted them. And then when they went back to watch the the other movies or the shows, they would have seen that like, oh wow, this character it's a consistent arc. I see this, instead of, oh, there was this character who existed and now I'm watching this new thing and they're not that same character. I'm confused, or I give up. I'm not watching this thing because it just doesn't make sense. And it's happening, and I wish it didn't. It ruins a lot of things. It makes it so that you want to enjoy a character, but then when you look back at the old stuff, all you can think about is how they were ruined in the future, and it makes it really hard to enjoy the old stuff because the new stuff keeps ruining the old stuff, if that makes any sense. So I'm kind of like getting in the weeds here, but basically it's all about when you create a character, like even if you're writing that character for the 8th installment of something, like, keep them consistent, keep them to their core of who they are, and like the audience will love you for it. They will love the fact that you're not forcing your characters to be something that they're not. So when you're creating a character, make sure you define who they are. In fact, it makes it a lot of fun when you define who the character is and you know the content of their character, and then you're able to kind of write in their voice, and you're able to really just like tell a story that's compelling, because like you don't really need much. You just need a character who like wants something, who fears of losing something, who just like it takes just very little to create a character sometimes, and they can be the most compelling character you've ever seen. And you can build on that, but there's a certain point where you just don't need to build anymore. The character's already established, and you can now just have them go on more adventures, or have them have more situations where they're kind of like their character is the thing that causes them to have so much trouble, or causes them to like save the day. I just will never understand why so some characters are forced to change when it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you've created anything, if you've been in this business for a while, you know that like the audience is going to reject it, and unfortunately it can be a money thing. It's like, well, we're just going to slap a name on this, it's a franchise name, so we're just going to, bring these characters together, and we're just going to have a new adventure, and the people who have never seen this before, they're going to love it because they have no frame of reference, and the people who will hate it are the ones who loved like the old ones, but hey, they're getting older, and eventually they'll go away, but we'll have this new audience, and that's not great. It's not gonna make it so that that story survives at all. In fact, it's gonna flail. It's gonna die. It's just gonna go away. People are gonna get sick of it, and they're gonna say, I used to love this thing so much, but now I just don't. It's just, I have apathy. I do not care anymore, and that's very sad, because the point of entertainment is to generate excitement, to get us like as human beings to be like, wow, we have potential as like human beings, like, and we just can like feel the energy of a good story. Like it lights you up. It makes you feel good about life. It makes you happy. It makes you want to share. Like if anything, you want to share a good story. You don't want to share a story that makes you feel like crap or that like judges you. You don't want to do that. You want to share a story that everybody can appreciate, can love, and is not trying to put people off because of like the current perspective or what have you. So this ended up turning into a little bit of a rant, but I just, because of the fact that I don't get why there are simple things like having consistent character and knowing your characters and knowing what they would do and what they wouldn't do, and knowing the content of those characters to decipher that. I just, it feels like it's lazy now, and it just feels like people don't care about some of these characters, or the people who are writing these characters don't care, or are intentionally trying to change them because they never liked them in the first place, and that really sucks. So yeah, I know I made a loose connection between Martin Luther King Jr. and celebrating his life today, and creating fiction, creating narratives, creating characters. But I think there's a nugget, a gold nugget in there of understanding that like yeah, a character is what they do, and if you neglect to find out like who those characters are, you will most likely down the road do something that will just like go against who that character is at their core. So all right guys, that's all I have for today. I wanted to give a shout out. I wanted to promote a podcast from a buddy of mine, Sam Vegas. He has this sports podcast called SVT podcast. It's about sports. It's about the Bay Area, and it's him and two other guys who they have a lot of knowledge about sports. They love just everything about it, and they also love film too. So it's like I'm giving them a shout out because they also like are avid film watchers, and they love talking about film as well. But this podcast is their perspective on sports and everything happening around that. So make sure to check them out. I believe they're on all the sites where you get podcasts. So yeah, give them a listen, give them a rating, drop them a line if you're a big sports guy. So, all right, guys, that's all I got for today. If you'd like to connect with me, there is an email for the podcast. It's tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. There's also a Twitter account. The handle is @title_Tim. There's also a Facebook page where you can post questions, or you can connect with me there. Thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you on the next one.